Please note that the views expressed on this program are those of the individuals who speak them, and not necessarily those of Portsmouth Community Radio, its Board of Trustees, members, volunteers, or underwriters. Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willie Hassell. Along with my co-host, Lynn Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. And good evening once again, and welcome to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. I am your host, Willie Hassell, your gatekeeper to the dark side, your guide to the realm of the unknown, the unseen, the unthinkable. And she is the always lovely, she is the mystical, she is the mysterious, Lynn Nickerson. Good evening.
Good evening, Willie. So,
how are you tonight?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. I think this mic is on then.
Well, that's a good thing, if you can hear yourself.
Well, I can't actually.
You can't?
I don't think so.
Uh-oh.
Can you turn it up?
We're having all kinds of technical difficulties tonight.
All right. Yes, that's good.
You can hear yourself now?
Yes.
All right.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Well, Willie's grabbing his bio here. We're about to introduce our guest for the evening.
Okay, so tonight on Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience, we are happy to welcome back to the show once again, Preston Dennett. And Preston is a field investigator for MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, as well as a ghost hunter and paranormal researcher. He is the author of 17 books to date and more than 100 articles on UFOs and the paranormal. Preston has also appeared on numerous radio and television programs, including History Channel's Deep Sea UFOs and UFO Hunters. His latest release is titled Not From Here, a collection of articles from his vast archives. In this book, he discusses such subjects as conversations with aliens, UFOs and the graveyard connection, and the intimidation and murder of UFO witnesses, and much more. So let us welcome to the show tonight, Preston Dennett. Good evening, Preston.
Hello, Preston.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, I'm really excited.
It's always a pleasure. Now, are we coming through okay?
I can hear you. It's a little faint, especially Willie. I can hear you fine, though. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try and speak up here. We're still in a little bit of a conundrum, but I think we can carry on. Well, anyway, it's great to have you back on again, Preston. So you've got 2 releases this year, right? You've got UFOs over Arizona, and then Not From Here.
Right.
That's wonderful.
This year, and hoping to put out Volume 2, actually, of Not From Here later this year.
Wonderful. Yeah, I saw that. You named it Volume 1, so I figured there's something to ensue. So, well, we're going to have you back to discuss UFOs over Arizona. So, the format of tonight's show is from Not From Here, differs somewhat from the others that you've written in that instead of a collection of brief personal testimonies, this is an eclectic collection of articles which you've written covering a broad spectrum of both encounters and experiences in the UFO arena. And as always, your research is comprehensive and well documented. I've really enjoyed this book. Also, our listeners should know that in addition to the strangeness inherent to many of these accounts, there is also the element of danger, which Willie brought up in his intro, and personal risk in bringing this information forward. Investigators have been harassed, harmed, and murdered, and you yourself have been contacted. So I'd like to touch on this risk factor during the second half of the hour. But anyway, for now, what I want to focus on for our conversation for tonight isn't going to center around the argument whether or not they're here, because I think it's a moot point. I think they're here, and it's my opinion that their existence is probably pretty well established. So rather than that, I'd like to concentrate on perhaps why they're here and who they might be. So as you've pointed out, there's a huge body of evidence supporting why they're here. And it seems to involve a myriad of reasons like our genetic material, our mineral resources, our biological resources, including plant and animal life. And fourthly, even more sinister than that, perhaps, is they're here maybe for the retrieval of our very souls, which is a very sobering thought. So I want to start off with the evidence of the encounters. There's two of them in particular I wanted to have you talk to us about. The evidence that they walk among us. And one is the New York City bookstore, and then the other one is the tale about the tall stranger at the subway station. So could you tell us about both of those tales, Preston?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's what was really fun about this book, is covering all these different aspects.
Yeah.
And I was really excited when I found all these articles that had never seen the light of day, and couldn't wait to, start talking about some of these various aspects of UFO research that you don't hear a lot about.
Mm-hmm.
And one of these chapters in the book is called "They Walk Among Us."
Yeah.
And the truth is, they do. And I know how this sounds, ETs walking among the general population. But I was able to uncover a good dozen cases, probably write a full-length book about this, honestly.
Yeah, and I'd love to read that one, too.
I found cases where people have seen ETs in really places you would not expect: schools, bookstores, casinos, hotels, grocery stores, cafes, gas stations. It's truly incredible, and some of these are, pretty well verified. So it's coming from credible witnesses, I mean.
And they're both humanoid and odd-looking, correct?
Some are human-looking, very much like us, but very odd. But there's a couple of cases where they're clearly not human at all.
Yeah.
One very interesting case comes from the editor of the book Communion.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Bruce Lee, not to be confused with the karate guy,
Mm-hmm.
but an editor for Morrow Books, and was very interested to see how the new book Communion was being displayed. And went to this bookstore in New York City, he says, and went to go look at the book display. And in front of this display, he sees these two figures. He said it was strange right from the get-go, because they were standing very close together. They were each dressed in these long scarves and wool hats that were pulled down. They had dark sunglasses, oversized sunglasses on.
Mm-hmm.
They were short, and they were holding one of the books up.
And they were speed reading.
Yeah, really unusual, and doing it in such a way that they were saying, "Oh, he got this wrong, he got this part wrong," and just really unusual. That part really got to him.
Yeah.
He walks up to them, and he says, honest to God, that they, behind these sunglasses, were not human eyes.
Mm.
He says they were very large almond eyes, and not human. He went away from it shaking and swears up and down that this was a very intense shock for him.
And another strange thing about that, when they walked in the store, they just walked directly to the book, right? Like they knew where it was.
Exactly.
That was rather odd.
This sounds. These are presumably the gray type of ETs that are involved with Whitley Strieber and are walking right among us. And not the only case like that. There are a number of cases. Another case that really caught my attention was that occurred to a young girl by the name of Shane Kurz. And really interesting case, because she was at school, actually. And this guy comes walking up on the playground, and she immediately notices that he looks different. His dress looked strangely modern, kind of. And his ears were all pointy. He had weird gray eyes that seemed very magnetic and seemed to kind of look right through her.
But he was still kind of humanoid, right?
place on his ancestry, whether he was Asian or not, or who he was, but just a very strange guy, and started asking her all kinds of strange questions about sports and things, like what is volleyball or what is basketball, and then asked her if she would like to go for a ride with him in his white vehicle that's parked over there. And there was no road over there. There was just a field, right? And she's like, no, I don't think so.
I'll pass.
Anyone would say. But here's where it gets strange. She's having an encounter. She had a missing time encounter, and later was taken on board and went under hypnosis. Under hypnosis, she recalls seeing this same figure on board the UFO, and who she also later saw in a liquor store.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, she was at a convenience store looking at a magazine when she saw this guy walk in with thin blonde hair, hardly any hair on his head at all, very white skin, kept looking at her. He was wearing this big, long, black overcoat that was oversized and covered him almost completely. She's thinking maybe he's an albino or something, because he had very strange eyes, white skin. Wasn't buying anything, was just really creepy looking at him. And yeah, there was this guy. She later saw him on board the UFO. So a lot of
Very
cases
odd.
like this. There's another case that occurred to a father and son. A really astonishing case, actually, because this father and son, John Hunter Gray is his name, actually, and he's a social worker, has won awards for it, and pretty well known. And driving with his son when they had a missing time encounter with a UFO. And later, they both recalled it naturally. I mean, without even using hypnosis. And they recalled being laid out on a table and undressed, and had an examination by gray-type ETs. The whole deal.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really interesting is what happened before this encounter. They had stopped off at a gas station, and next to them there was this guy in another vehicle who looked really strange. First of all, he was very, very short. And he had a full fisherman's cap on that covered his head, had sunglasses, scarves, every part of him was covered. And the guy was staring at them. And as they left the gas station, this guy followed them for quite some time, finally disappeared. They tried altering their speed. The guy would not pass them or anything. And finally the car left, and that's when they had this missing time encounter. They feel up and down that this was related in some way.
And where was this, Preston? What state? Preston?
Excuse me?
Oh, where was this?
That was up in, I believe it was Richfield, Wisconsin. Somewhere.
Oh, in Wisconsin. Okay. That's very peculiar. What about the tall alien at the subway station that the woman saw? And apparently she was the only one who saw him, and she got a telepathic message to just keep on going. But her description of him was very odd. Right.
Yeah, there are some cases where it seems like some of these ETs are standing among people and no one's noticing them.
Yeah.
And this was one case where you would not expect to see an ET, but this lady saw this very strange-looking figure who did not appear to be human. And
he was 6'7".
Was very tall and had a very broad face and looked very strange, and was moving very strangely. And they locked gazes for a second there, and she realized this is not a human being, and kept on moving. So yeah, that was at a train station. There was one case of a lady who saw a gray-type ET on a subway. She's had encounters her whole life, and this was another weird example of no one seeming to notice this figure on this train subway. And she noticed it instantly because of the texture of its skin was very plastic-like. And she looked up at it, and yep, it was this little man, bald, with this plastic skin, large eyes, and she's like, "Oh my God!" And it was in the crowd, so she had trouble keeping view of it. And but yeah, this, not just one or two of these cases.
No, there's quite a few. And they're all a little different.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of them. But it appears that ETs do have the ability to disguise themselves,
Yeah.
disguise the people around them, that they're not being seen. For example, I have, in this chapter there are about 3 or 4 cases of casino cases
Yes.
where ETs are inside casinos.
And they show up on... Go ahead.
And why are they there? I don't know. Maybe they're interested in our culture. Maybe it's pretty lights of Las Vegas. I'm not sure.
Well, it's very close to Area 51, too, and, I guess they have to go out and go on vacation every once in a while, too.
Well, yeah, maybe they like to gamble, too.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I'm sure they're checking out our culture, though.
It's strange, isn't it?
Yes. Very. What about that woman who came up to you at a conference and she told you about the encounter that she had at her UFO conference, and the guy appeared in a mist and walked toward her and started talking to her?
Yeah, I told you that story a while back, huh?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, did you? Yeah, it was in this one, too, and he said that he had an Earth job and he had a family, but that he had to go off-planet and do other things from time to time.
Right. This is one of the few cases that I had heard from myself. Yeah, that's what she told me, and I'm like, are you serious?
Unreal.
Yeah, this is exactly what she described. And often you'll meet strange people at UFO conferences. Every now and then,
Yeah, come up with a story.
will kind of stare at you with our, and she was telling me this story. She was out in the corridor. Yeah, and this guy just walks out of this puff of smoke, and she's thinking, oh, is this a joke? What's going on? Is this guy just trying to be funny or tricky? But apparently, no, it wasn't that at all. He was entirely sincere.
Yeah. And what about Edwin in 1960 in Durban, South Africa? I found that pretty intriguing because that was back in 1960 when UFOs were kind of walking, not UFOs, but aliens were walking amongst us. He started working with George at the factory, and George was actually Voldar from Koldus, the planet Koldus. What did you think about that account?
I find it very interesting because they're different from a lot of the modern accounts that we have, like here in the United States. And an interesting early account of a contactee, which I find very convincing.
Yeah.
And that one was originally published, I think, by Wendell Stevens.
Oh, right. He's big in UFO, too.
Right. Just a very interesting case. And where these ETs are working among us and with certain people. I think that, I know, in some cases at least, that they're helping people out, but don't want to help too much. Because we sort of have to solve our own problems.
Yeah, that's right. They don't want to blow their cover, and they don't want to go against the governments either. They do want to be invited, and they haven't been.
Right. But I've noticed a pattern that the people who are being contacted are often the people who are trying to do good for society, like John Hunter Gray, who is an award-winning social worker, or one couple who had an encounter in Sedona, Arizona, that had a very interesting encounter with very human-looking ETs. They said who could have passed among the human population had they been wearing sunglasses and a hat and that sort of thing.
What happened there?
They actually asked these guys, why are you here? And they said, oh, we're here to help people who are helping others. But we just can't do too much. And this couple were healers in their community in Hawaii and become very effective and popular. So I think that's one of the reasons that the guy actually had a healing experience as a result.
Really?
He was having trouble with his knee and things like that, and they helped him out.
Wow. Now, is that one in the book?
No, that one wasn't.
Okay.
That part was actually told in one of my other books, Extraterrestrial Visitation.
Well, actually, I think, Preston, that I met one in Sedona, too, and he was very humanoid looking. He had a slight accent, but he looked French or Swiss. He was fine-boned, and he could read my mind, and that it was kind of shocking. Directly in Sedona. And then as soon as he came into my life, he left. I always wondered about that, but I really think that that's what that was all about.
It's entirely possible because they are very telepathic.
Yes.
And, Timothy Good, one of my favorite UFO researchers.
He's wonderful.
It's just amazing. His research is
Yes.
incredible. Got a number of excellent books out.
Yes.
I always look forward to them. And he says that he had this type of encounter as well at a hotel in New York City, the Sheraton Hotel.
Oh, yes. He's the one that sat in the lobby?
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. He said a large lobby, too, crowded, filled with people, and he sat down in there for an hour, sending out a mental message. If there are any ETs, any space people around, please let your presence be known. And it happened. He says he was about to give up when this very healthy-looking man, about 5'10", came and sat down behind him, pulled out a copy of the New York Times from his briefcase and started reading it. And so there's a lot of places anyone can sit in this lobby, and this guy was sat down right next to him, right? So Timothy Good mentally requests, if you're a spaceman, touch your finger to your nose. And he says, immediately it happened. Did not look at him.
Whoa.
Just quickly picked up his finger and put it along the side of his nose. And then got up and walked away.
I'm going to try that sometime.
Yeah, that's a good experiment to try. Get in a crowded area and send out that message.
Nice summer night down at the down Market Square.
Yeah.
Give that a try.
Yeah, I always tell people, pay attention to the people around you.
Truly.
Especially when you're in these public places.
That's an amazing story. He also wrote a great deal about the group in Italy and Switzerland. It was called Amicizia, friendship in Italian. And it was a group of engineers and business people, mostly people with degrees that had been invited into this group. And they had been invited by humanoid-looking ETs. It's an interesting story. It's in Earth Alien Enterprise by Timothy Good. Did you read that one yet?
Right.
It's just reinforcement for the idea that they are here. How about the story about, the idea that there are alien zoos, although they're not really perceived as zoos, but rather preserves. And there were a couple of really good stories in there about them taking our animals and plants and whatnot. And there was one guy who was out hunting for elk. Do you recall that one, Preston?
Oh, I do, yeah. Alien zoos. I know how that sounds.
Yeah.
Because normally, I've interviewed a lot of people. And you can kind of predict what they're going to say to a certain extent. And they say that they've been taken, aboard a UFO. Often I'll hear about examinations and things like this. But these are a different type of case, for sure. And they're pretty rare, but there's a few cases like this where people have been taken on board a UFO, and the things they see are different from what most people see. It's not an examination room. It's not the engine room. It's not like a baby presentation or a nursery or anything like this. And what we're seeing is animal or nature preserves. There was one case from John Mack where one of his clients was taken aboard a UFO and into a very large room that contained a full-size, totally natural pine forest.
That's amazing.
And she could smell it. There were rocks, there were dirt, they were fully alive. It smelled real. And it was about the size of a high school gym, she estimated. She could see curving walls going up on the sides. But breathtaking. I mean, can you imagine?
It must have been a huge ship.
Oh, it's just, and if you think about it, it's really not that surprising because they've been seen hovering over farms, taking rabbits, there's all kinds of examples of them taking farm animals and things like this. But what we don't normally see is what happens at that point. There was one guy who was a hunter. This is the case you mentioned, Carl Higdon.
Mm-hmm.
And on October 25th, 1974, he was out hunting elk. This was in Wyoming. And he had just literally fired his gun when the bullet comes out, and the bullet slows down, drops, and falls to the ground. And he sees this strange humanoid figure with a orangish kind of hair sticking straight out. And next thing he knows, he's getting kind of invited or coerced aboard this UFO. He doesn't have complete self-control at this point, but finds himself aboard a UFO, and aboard this UFO are the elk.
The 5 elk?
Right, in this big glass-type cage. So, yeah, I mean...
Like, how did that happen?
Right?
That's amazing. So there is kind of an indication that they want to preserve life, because didn't the ETs say that they needed it for reproduction? They needed the 5 elk?
Right, and I think that's one of the reasons they're doing this.
Yeah,
because
to preserve them.
Species disappear, especially on our planet. We have species disappearing literally on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're doing. And we have evidence of that coming from these accounts, because some of these people like Betty Andreasen, very well-known abductee, reports being taken to these zoo-like places. This was an underground area where she was taken to, where there were all these glass enclosures encasing all kinds of animals and beings, including some that were extinct.
Yeah.
So that's something else to think about.
That's quite an experience. That's going to be quite an experience to go through that. Preston, we're just a little bit beyond the bottom of the hour, so we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. We're talking to Preston Dennett, and his latest book is Not From Here, Selected UFO Articles, Volume 1, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Supernatural Magazine, the UK's newest paranormal magazine, provides support to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. It is the magazine's goal to bring every aspect of supernatural news and research from around the world under one roof to create a universal platform for all those interested in the supernatural. More information is available at supernaturalmagazine.com. You are listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM, and we'll be right back after this short break.
You are listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM in Portsmouth's West End. And from the community calendar, Soundstage 909 presents Paranormal Evidence Review with Spirit Chasers Paranormal. The team from Spirit Chasers Paranormal, along with special guest Belle Lufaso of Seacoast Paranormal Research Group, we'll be holding an evening of paranormal fun and education, and that is this Friday, March 11th from 6 to 8 p.m. on the brand new Soundstage 909, which is located right here at the WSCA Studios, which is at 909 Islington Street in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And this is by donation, with 100% of the donations from this event will go to help support WSCA Portsmouth Community Radio. And for more information, online at spiritchasersparanormal.com. And some upcoming guests.
Upcoming guest list starts with March 12th. Sam Queen and Jamie Davis wrote Haunted Asylums, Prisons, and Sanatoriums. Jamie unfortunately can't join us, but Sam is returning, and we're going to be wrapping up the remaining stories of some of these insanely haunted locations. March 19th, our good friend Tom Spitaleri, director of Essex County Ghost Project, is returning to our studio to talk about some of the latest investigations, as well as surprise us of the lineup of speakers for his Parafest conference coming up in April, March 26th. We were fortunate to get a guest on a really short notice. We had a cancellation, and Tom J. Carey and Don Schmidt are authors of Children of Roswell, which is a collective account from the families of the first-hand witnesses to the aftermath of the Roswell crash in 1947. Mr. Schmidt can't make the interview, but Tom Carey will be here to talk about their latest book. And last but not least in the lineup here is Michelle Matuzas, and she's a psychic medium empath who is also an historic reenactor and a member of the Spirit Light Network. And she has released her own deck of tarot cards, all of which display her own artwork. And she'll be talking to us about this unusual, enterprising idea. And we'd like to also bring up Preston's artwork. Willie, you wanted to mention that?
That's right. And so, anyway, now let's go back to the phone with tonight's guest, Preston Dennett. Welcome back, Preston.
Hi, Preston.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I wanted to mention the artwork in the book is amazing. Is that your daughter?
My sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law. Oh, okay. All right.
Who I'm so lucky to have worked with, and pretty much from the beginning, actually. And the whole book is illustrated. She did the cover as well as the illustrations inside.
Yeah.
It adds so much to it.
Yeah, they are great. Great artwork.
Yeah, and great color combinations.
Yeah, she's really become accomplished, and very blessed to be working with her.
Oh, yeah, and her
It's
use
so
of pastels. Very, very nice. I think what we got was probably an advanced copy, so we haven't seen all of the photos in color, but they're really well done. So let me see. Returning to our conversation here, I just lost my page. So we were talking about them infiltrating us, our society. There's also another reason for genetic material. Were we in the middle of a story? We wrapped up that story, didn't we, Preston?
Excuse me?
We wrapped up that last story.
Yeah, about them walking among us. There's a bunch of cases that we could talk about, but I think we got the point across.
Yeah. So I wanted to move on to a couple of other things. One is them seen hovering over both cemeteries and funeral homes. And, like, what the heck is the purpose of that? And you bring up some very good points. So was there a couple that stick out in your mind?
Yeah, what I found was an extraordinary number of cases right off the bat. So this is pointed to the fact that something was going on.
Yeah.
And a number of these cases aren't just sightings. We have cases where the beams of light are coming down from the UFOs and striking the ground and leaving burn marks. A number of landing cases, and a few cases where people have actually seen humanoids walking among the graveyards. So you have to ask yourself, what's going on here?
Yeah.
There was one case in Massachusetts, comes from jail in Hynek, and involves a couple who was driving up to they actually decided to take a drive and look at the newly fallen snow, and came upon the local cemetery, which was completely shrouded in fog. Mind you, it was a clear day, or nothing, not a cloud in the sky, except this fog. They thought it was so thick that it might be a fire. And as they got closer, they saw this glowing object hovering over the cemetery there. And they approach it, and he gets out of his car, which stalls, and the lights go out, and suddenly, he's lifting his hand to wave at this object, when his hand is thrown back and sticks to the car, and he's paralyzed until this object has time to sort of lift up, move, and dart away. And my question is, what is so important that they were willing to do this to someone who's driving by that they did not want people to see? So this is the kind of cases that's coming out of this sort of encounter. One cemetery in Virginia, the Dean Memorial Cemetery, was having so much activity that the local people there actually could stake out UFOs. They would go there to see a UFO, and because they knew it would show up. And this is another case evidence where some of these graves appear to be disturbed, or there's markings of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my question is why? Now, I do have my theories.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of cases too where they're fresh graves, right? Where they had just been buried, like the day before
Right.
or something, and they seem
Right,
to be
which also-
centering on those.
Which I think kind of speaks to why we're
Right.
seeing these types of cases. I think what we have here is a case of, I know how this sounds, but this is what the evidence is showing us, case of extraterrestrial grave robbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact is, there is genetic material
Mm-hmm.
that is still viable
That's right.
in these graves and will remain viable for a number of days at least. And maybe that's what they're looking for. Now, another researcher, Scott Corrales, wrote about this. And
Oh, did he?
yes, and brought up the possibility that perhaps they were looking for alien implants.
I don't know why that would be, Preston. It would seem more that they would be looking for fresh, viable genetic material. Why would they care if there were implants in the corpses?
Right. I hadn't thought of that possibility, but anything is possible.
Yeah.
But I do find it interesting.
Yeah, it is.
That there are so many. I mean, not only like you mentioned over graveyards, but over funeral homes and mortuaries.
Yeah. So
So there's clearly an interest in there.
they would have
These
direct
types of places.
access to the bodies from mortuaries and funeral homes, but has anyone seen them lifting anything out of a grave at a cemetery?
No, we don't have
No?
any reports of that.
Okay.
Now that would be something else. I mean,
Yeah, wouldn't it?
but you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if something like that is going on when people are approaching these cemeteries and their car stalls out.
Yeah.
The whole place is shrouded in fog because they're doing something that they don't want to be seen. And more than likely, that's what they're doing. They're either surveying it or more than likely taking samples of some kind.
Yeah. Let me see. There's a story from James L. Warden from March of 1992, and under regression, he was saying that he's a composite of several people and several beings, and this would be a prime example of the end result of this interference with genetic material. He claimed that they took genetic material from 2 male corpses and 1 female to create his embryo.
Right. And, this is something that we, as human beings, actually have the ability now to do.
Yeah.
So, okay, a bit perhaps not as far-fetched as one might think.
It's shocking, but
and
not
really
far-fetched.
Right? It really speaks to our origins as a species.
Yeah.
And how long have we been manipulated, and who are we really? And what is our relationship with ETs, especially because some of them do, in fact, look so much like us, and apparently we're hybridizing with the Greys.
Mm-hmm.
There's just layers and layers
Right.
of stuff.
Multi-leveled.
Right, which was what was so fun about this book is because I got to cover various little-known corners of research and aspects, and cover the whole field, kind of. And none of this stuff is available in my other books as well. So that was one of the rules when I put it together.
When do you think it'll be released?
The Kindle copy of this book is now available, and the paper copy is going to be available probably by certainly this month.
Ooh.
But hopefully in a couple of days.
Wonderful. And what about the new release? When do you think that'll be available? Volume 2?
Well, UFOs over Arizona is coming later this year, and the second volume I want to put out, I'm aiming for, June or July at the latest.
Okay, good. I'm sure our listeners
we'll see,
want to know.
because, there's always a lot of people involved to put a book together.
Well, I also wanted to touch on mineral resources and them hovering over mines, and they're very interested in several of our metals. I wanted to get into that, but I want to definitely leave some time about the intimidation and murder factor. So, would you like to tell us about what you know about the minerals, the gold, titanium, and so forth?
Yeah, this was a study I did, and I think it's probably the largest study of its kind. I don't think I've read the only study of its kind. Any other thing about this?
I've heard of
comes through?
gold, but nothing else, that they were interested in gold. And you're bringing up all of these other metals that they're interested in.
Right, and what we have is very similar to the graveyard phenomena.
Right.
Another, what I would call a UFO attractor. And in this case, the attractor is mine. And like you said, no, it's not just gold, though there are cases of gold mines, but uranium mines, iron mines, copper mines, the list goes on. Where places where there are rare metals also seem to have a very high number of UFO encounters. And some of these are really remarkable encounters. Not just UFOs hovering over mines, but landing next to them, humanoid cases, including deep underground, and in some cases hovering over smelting plants and sending down probes and beams of light, widely viewed by a lot of people, and occurring all across the world, across the United States and elsewhere. So really a remarkable phenomenon.
You know, Zachariah Sitchin had written about the Anunnaki coming here to retrieve gold. That was the first I'd heard about their interest in our metals and our natural resources. But they needed it for their atmosphere, and I don't know if it was to block rays coming from the sun. But that was the first occurrence that I had heard about it. And so why stop there? It makes a lot of sense.
Right. And I think this speaks towards them being real. That this is a real phenomenon and not something that's, manifested, so to speak, or hallucinatory in any way, but something that can burn you, can leave physical marks, leaves landing traces, and is a metallic vehicle. For example, there's a case involving a titanium mine. Titanium is a metal that's sometimes pointed towards being involved with UFOs.
Right.
And there's a case to support it, and a really interesting case because it involved two witnesses who repeatedly saw not only a UFO, but a short figure, humanoid figure. They thought at first it was a small child with a bucket, but it was a weird bucket and certainly not a child. And what was really interesting about this case is it first appeared on May 20th. Then 1 month later it came on June 20th. And the case became publicized. And everyone was thinking, all right, well, since this thing has showed up actually 3 months in a row, April 20th, May, and then June, everyone assumed that it was going to show up on July 20th. And there was a crowd of probably 100 people there or more. And it's this weird party atmosphere waiting for this UFO to show up, and it never did. And that was kind of the end of this Brush Creek mine encounter in California. But a really interesting type of one of these cases.
Well, they must have gotten the message that there was going to be a crowd there, and they decided not to come.
I thought of that. I thought that, that was a definite possibility.
Yeah. That's just amazing.
A lot of cases, though. They seem to be very interested in copper as well. A bunch of cases in Arizona, which is, the copper state.
That's right.
There's a lot of cases of them hovering over copper mines.
Arizona and Colorado. Chris O'Brien wrote about them wanting gold out of the hills in Arizona. Colorado, in Colorado. He documented a lot of that. How about the intimidation and murder then, Preston? You had a long section about this Ray Thomas, who wound up contacting Aerial Phenomena Research Organization located in Tucson. He thought that he was doing the right thing by apprising them of UFOs, and he was harassed ever since then. So could you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, this is a chapter I wrote because honest to God, this is a serious subject.
Yeah.
And one I certainly take seriously, and one I think that has the potential to change the world in a number of ways. I mean, it could solve the energy crisis, it could solve the economic crisis, it could solve all kinds of problems that we have. And instead, how this is being dealt with is just awful. I mean, UFO witnesses are being intimidated and traumatized and ridiculed. And it's not just one or two cases. There are a number of cases like this.
Ridiculed and murdered, even suspected. That, you know, that's a possibility.
Right. Yeah, and the Ray Thomas is one of these, involving this guy, a Marine officer, and he had watched the movie Hangar 18 and was stunned to see that this movie was portraying pretty much the same experience he had in the military. And he thought, oh, well, the subject must have been declassified. And this is when he decided to go public and told his story to APRO. And everything went south from there.
Yeah.
You know, he found out that, no, the subject had not been revealed publicly and that he had crossed the line.
Sort
and
of
he
a
ended up
breach. Yeah.
really regretting, you know, going public about this. And it caused a huge uproar and really got very complicated into a sticky situation. It's quite a long story.
Yeah, he got harassed and he asked for help from this Ron Curtis, who was a cop. And then they tried to pursue it, and then they were both told to back off. And then he had to move to Abilene, Texas, and his girlfriend got killed.
Right. So it's tragic.
It's tragic. The way they were just pursued.
Of, you know, Danny Gordon of Whitfield, Virginia. He's just this reporter when this UFO wave strikes his town. And he somehow finds himself the lead investigator because he went on a radio show to take calls. Next thing you know, he's just fielding all these calls and has come on the front lines of UFO research. Then suddenly he finds out that his phone is tapped and he's receiving death threats. And it goes on from there. He ended up having a heart attack. And the stress level apparently was so high. There are definite dangers to UFO research that I'm not sure everyone's aware of.
And how about you, Preston? You did mention that you...
You know, I have had a few things that I wonder about. I've certainly had my share of phone problems, my share of mail problems, you know, back when mail was popular, snail mail.
Yeah.
And for that matter, email problems. I really have. I've been hacked a few times. I've done... Early on when I was doing interviews over the phone, there would be so many clicks and static and just weird things that the witnesses would say, "Oh gosh, do you want me to call back?" I'm like, no, because it's hard sometimes to pin down an interview.
Yeah.
I would just continue it. But I started to really wonder. The mail problem, my mail problem with UFO mail, sending out books and articles and things like this, was so bad that I could predict it.
Really?
I was sending out a lot of stuff, and it would come back open. And I brought my sister over. I'm like, I'm going to open my mailbox in front of you, and you tell me. And sure enough, there was a letter again or a book or something that I had sent out and was being responded to, and it was already open. She's like, gosh, you should say something about this. I'm like, well, my research is public. I mean, I have really nothing to hide.
Yeah.
I think the worst that happened to me really ever was I received a phone call from some guy who started to threaten me. First he gave his list of credentials, saying he worked in top secret Vietnam mapping or something like this, satellite mapping. I forget exactly what he mentioned, but he was going on and on about it. And finally I'm like, all right, get to the point. And this is when he started talking in circles. He said, "You're barking up the wrong tree with this UFO research." And not only that, he said, "There's no pay dirt in it. There's nothing to it," which seemed to me contradictory.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, you know, and he kind of went on with that for a little while, and that was really it. And I was more flattered, really, than, you know, scared. I was doing the research into the Topanga Canyon UFO wave at the time. I thought it might be related to that, but I don't know.
Has it
I don't know who
backed
that guy
off?
was.
Has it backed off? Have they backed off?
Yeah, that was it, really. I can't really point to anything else specific. Certainly haven't had any problems in years in that regard, at least. But I sometimes do feel like I'm being observed.
Yeah, I
And I
think
know
we
that
all do.
There's an invasion of privacy has reached a level that's absurd with cameras and TVs and Facebook
Yeah.
and cell phones tracking your every move. And
Yeah.
there's that case going on right now with Apple. So
Oh,
I think
really?
and we know UFO researchers are being observed by the government. There's been some studies on this and some revelations. Certainly earlier in the 50s and 60s,
Well,
there's a lot of evidence of it.
I think the public really appreciates all the work you put into it and exposing this, because I think it's important.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, this is my passion, and I think, like it's an important subject, and it's also, very interesting.
It is.
Constantly changing.
Yes, it's such a revelation. Preston, we're at the end of the hour now. We're going to have to sign off, but we would love to have you come back and also talk about UFOs over Arizona.
Oh, absolutely. I'll let you know when it's
Wonderful.
released, and very excited about that as well. It was a pretty big book. Some
Wonderful.
really interesting stuff I was surprised to find.
And volume 2, too. Go ahead, Willie.
I was just going to say, you want to let people know where they can get the books and your website?
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff?
The book is available on Amazon.com, not from here. If you just punch in my name, it'll take you to it. Or you can go to my website, which is also my name, Preston Dennett. The actual address is PrestonDennett.weebly.com. But if you just Google my name, it'll take you there, and I've got excerpts of all my books, actually. And you can contact me as well through my website. I'm working on another book about UFO healings, updating the first edition. So I'm looking for new cases there. So I'm always willing to, hear from people, and I very much appreciate you guys having me on the show. Yeah.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Well, we appreciate you coming on and joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Preston.
Thank you very much, Preston.
Oh, we have to sign off.
Okay.
All right. Well, yeah, it was fun. Looking forward to doing it again.
Terrific.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Okay, that's Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. Craig Mosier with the Graveyard Shift is coming right up.
And thank you, everyone, for listening, and have a good evening.